Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Mridanga, Namo Namaha. Jai Karanga, Jai Nishringadev. We still have the Mridanga mantra there to show respect to the Mridanga, because this is still, I guess, primarily a Mridanga channel, but I've been feeling very strongly a desire to speak a little bit more about philosophy, about spiritual knowledge, and just kind of freely associating, I guess, a lot of my personal experiences, my experiences with Mridanga, ISKCON, temples, traveling, and hopefully some of that knowledge will come through as we discuss Bhagavad Gita here and see what we can relate to that. Also just discussing the general principles of this practice called Bhakti Yoga or Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And yeah, it's not going to be super structured. I'm the type of person that I've never followed the rules right from when I was a child, way before I understood anything about spiritual practice or Krishna consciousness. I was always the person that saw things in a different way and always saw a different way of doing things that most other people didn't, or even if they saw that path, they didn't necessarily want to pursue it. They were happy to just toe the party line or do their homework in the same way that everyone else was told to do their homework. So in that sense, when I came to Bhakti, it was a similar thing where, even if other people saw specific paths that were available to them, they weren't interested because they would look different or not fit in, or it wasn't the particular path that, would be seen as desirable to move forward in Krishna consciousness in the society, or any number of things. And this comes up in your life in every circumstance and every job and every social circle and every interaction with your children and your family. There's always these different paths, and the path that your heart truly desires is not always the path that society or your family would want you to choose. It might not be the easiest path. And so when you come to a position in life where you start seeing more of these paths and more things start kind of opening up to you as you get older, then you're given more of these choices. And those choices can be made within Bhakti or prior to coming to Bhakti, where you're seeing more religions and more different options for you to follow. But there's always these choices that we have to make. And Bhagavad Gita as well is discussing these choices, where you have someone called Arjuna, who is a very famous and skillful fighter in a specific time over 5,000 years ago, where this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. And Arjuna is now given a choice, and there's thousands and thousands of pages and verses describing a very intricate circumstance and, many events that took place to lead up to this particular moment. And if you're interested in looking into that further, there's quite a bit of information that you can find. And it's called the, let me see here. Yeah, the Mahabharata would be the scripture that you'd be looking into. But this is the Bhagavad Gita here that we're going to be discussing by Srila Prabhupada. And we've skipped to chapter contents of the Gita summarized, so chapter 2, text 1. And Arjuna is discussing with Krishna essentially in the middle of a battlefield with family members on both sides of the battle, all army generals and highly skilled archers and various different people, grandfathers, fathers, everyone is on different sides of this fight. And Arjuna is sad and asking Krishna, like, what am I supposed to do here? Because obviously, if you fight, if you don't fight, if you win, if you don't win, none of the paths that he saw in this particular circumstance led to a position where he himself would be happy with the outcome. If you kill your family, then obviously you're not going to be happy about that no matter the result, because now you've lost family members that you have attachment to. And if those family members then win or kill you, or in some circumstance succeed, then you yourself are then losing the battle as a Kshatriya, as someone who is supposed to be highly skilled in fighting. Then you have then lost your honor or your life. So in no way was he seeing, if I lay down my sword or if I take my sword up, what is the benefit in either case? And that is a very materialistic way of looking at things, and the same way that we're all brought up to look at these different circumstances. We're always told to place ourselves in the center of everything. or we're told to place other people or other animals in the center of everything, doing philanthropy work, UNICEF, helping the children, helping the animals with animal shelters. We either love to place ourselves in the center, or we like to place other people in the center and then also take responsibility for that. Look how many people I'm helping, look how many animals I'm helping, look how much food we're producing for these people, look how much technology we're giving to people here that don't have internet or access to knowledge or all these different things. So it doesn't matter what you do. Eventually, if you follow those paths back, you then see yourself at the center of it. Everything has always been like that from a material perspective. The entire material nature works on this principle of placing yourself in the center. But the question is, one, are you capable of being in the center? Are you capable of enjoying the position in the center? How long can you maintain that position of being in the center? What detriments are there to placing yourself in the center, i.e. you're not always in the center, so you're always striving to get into the center of certain circumstances when 8 billion other people are all trying to do the same thing as well. So obviously there's going to be conflicts here. Also, the other question is, who are you as a person placing yourself in the center? What are you identifying as? And seeing a vision of different people as bodies, whether they're animals, plants, or people themselves, then are you seeing each of those people as just bodies that are growing, getting old, aging, dying, loving, caring, hating, fighting? Are we seeing those things just as that? Or are we looking deeper into a little bit more of a spiritual perspective where you might see past the body and at least maybe even to a consciousness level or deeper than that? So some of these questions are being asked by Arjuna here. So his first statement here, Arjuna says, well, so in the many thousands of years ago, people were said to be far more advanced in every way than we are. So we think that advancing in material life makes us more advanced people. However, as we advance further and further into technology, we can see how easily and quickly we degrade ourselves. With more technological advances, the Vedas state that you become a more degraded society. Super easy to see how that's happening Just look at our cell phones. We all grew up my age, we never had cell phones. We didn't even have internet for a long time. And now we live with these cell phones. We use them constantly. We're practically jacked into a matrix with these things. And we don't associate with people the same way that we do. We don't have a desire to, because we can just use our phone and connect with people. And, we don't play cards and board games and so many things the way that we used to, because now we have these cell phones that do so many different things. So this technological advancement of this cell phone here has completely degraded our relationships and ability to connect with people, or even desire to connect with people in different ways. And it's not even something that maybe the people that designed the phone ever imagined would happen. But just look at social media and what Facebook, and now people can take a photo of you without you even knowing, and make fun of you while you're at the gym, and post it on their social media that was created to help, originally connect people in schools and high school and stuff. And at some point, those mediums did kind of work in such a way for a little bit. But slowly, as more and more people use them, as advertising gets involved, as vested interests get involved, as more material minds get involved, they find ways of exploiting and degrading these things, so that now you can sit on there and, have endless prajalpa and fight amongst each other and comment on whatever you like, and every person can pull together all of their, desires and inspire millions of other people to have those same desires just from working on their phone at home. We have so much connectivity, and being that connected to so many people that might not have a higher consciousness easily allows weaker people to be manipulated by those stronger people and those stronger modes of nature. And it's just very, very easy to see how these things degrade your society. So 5,000 years ago, when Bhagavad Gita was spoken, there weren't any of these things. However, people were larger, stronger, farly, much more intelligent, more skilled, and they also had access to a lot of, mystic siddhis, that they're called. Siddhi, kind of like city, but different spelling. And these mystic siddhis facilitated people to be able to see with their minds different things that were happening around them. This is one of the mystic siddhis. So Sanjaya is discussed here, and he's being used on one side of the army by a king. He's asking, so what is Krishna and Arjuna? What is happening? What's happening on the other side? What are they speaking? So during this entire Bhagavad Gita, and it's just a conversation actually between Krishna and Arjuna. And Sanjaya has this mystic siddhi where he's able to speak the Bhagavad Gita to the king and tell him what they are speaking, even though he's not there. So he's on the other side of this large infantry and kind of listening in to what's happening. So it says, Sanjaya said, seeing Arjuna full of compassion and very sorrowful, his eyes brimming with tears, Madhusudan, Krishna, spoke the following words. So right off the bat, it says, Arjuna full of compassion and very sorrowful, his eyes brimming with tears. So Arjuna is extremely compassionate towards these family members on the other side that he's expected to now fight and kill. As a Kshatriya, you have a duty as a trained killer and a trained warrior to perform that duty, even outside of Krishna consciousness. If you are good at doing something, if it is your so-called dharma, then you must, pursue that path, and you must pursue it with full kind of strength and vigor, and not try to dabble in different things that are not necessarily suited to you. And again, this is where Varnashram Dharma comes in, is it helps so many people that have unsteady minds, and they like to always move in directions that aren't necessarily healthy for them. And the Varnashram system helps to keep those people stable and protected, and gives them food and shelter if they need, and also helps those people that are in, higher ashrams as well to perform their tasks and become expert in those areas, and not get kind of sidetracked into different endeavors that aren't necessarily part of their their nature. And there will be people as well that will help them to find out what their true natures are. So Arjun's true nature essentially is a killing machine. I mean, he is one of the greatest warriors on the planet at the time. And for him to lay down his weapons in this circumstance would be completely absurd. And for him to not be successful as a warrior as well is also not outside, the realm of expectations. So if he were to leave this battle, pretty much for him, everything would be lost, no matter what happened. But he's unable to see, as we said, what possible positive outcome there could be from him fighting. So he's compassionate towards his family members. He's sorrowful. He's crying. And then it says Krishna spoke the following words. So the rest of the Bhagavad Gita is basically Krishna explaining to Arjuna, not the full spectrum, but a very good broad spectrum of all the different yogic paths, bhakti yoga, and how he can see past his kind of material afflictions at the moment, and be able to fight in this battle with full confidence that his fighting is exactly what he should be doing. And not necessarily the fighting itself, but the consciousness that he's able to attach to the fighting. So what is his motives? What's his consciousness? Why is he fighting? And that's the most important thing in life, is learning to control the mind so that you're able to see things. You're doing the exact same things. You're living the same way. You're interacting with people in the same fashion. Most people won't even notice the difference. But your true inner intentions, your long-term desires, your goals, your material insight is always there in the background, so that your motives are very different from other people's motives. And when you have a motivation, people can't necessarily see what that is. They only see the end result. People might start to envy the results because they're becoming more positive than the results that they're able to get. They might deride you as well, because you might be doing things that they might not understand, because you're not getting any positive results. So you might even be losing money. Why are you doing this? You could be so successful in this endeavor. So some people might not understand why you stray from the path too, as your kind of inner consciousness and your inner motives change. So you cannot judge someone on the externals of their behavior. Really, the only judge in any circumstance in the material planet should be what someone's motives are. And you'll see what this means later, because that's a difficult argument, because you can say, hey, well, even if someone's motives aren't good, if they're doing so much good in the world, then who cares what their motives are, because they're benefiting so many people. Well, this term benefit is a very loose term. You're not able to benefit people materially. Essentially, there is no absolute scale of benefit in the material world. It's actually all negative when you're dealing in a material spectrum without adding in some spiritual motives. If you're not adding in at least some Krishna consciousness to it, then your actions essentially are worthless. They're not taken into account, and you'll see what that means. When you're dealing on the material spectrum, we'll talk about this later, the accounts that are, recorded, excuse me, in that sense, when your motives aren't Krishna conscious based, is simply karma. Good karma, bad karma. Good karma, bad karma. The karmic books just adjust, and the karmic books also force all of you to act a certain way as well. So you're bound by your karma, and that karma then binds you to incurring more karma, whether that's positive or negative. You're completely controlled. And in that sense, there's no reason to place other people higher or lower in your consciousness, because they're all just forced into living the way that they're going to live anyways. And what is the point of, thinking that's so great? For one person it's successful, or that person is so bad because they're forced to kill people or rape people. So the material side of things, there's not a lot to be said about that. There's really nothing to discuss ultimately. The other side, the spiritual side, you have to then try to determine what people's actual motives are behind those things. And spiritualists are said to be able to control this karma and remove it, so that their motives here are then able to drive their actions. These people here, they're not able to. They think that they're controlling their actions, but it's just the mind and the karma controlling their bodies, controlling their life, controlling their actions, controlling their interactions. Here, as a spiritualist, this starts to go away, and some impetus, just a little bit of impetus, little bit of spiritual motivation creeps in on this side here, which is the transcendental realm. Both of these, the karmic realm and the transcendental realm, are accessible here, and they're both able to be expressed through the material body as well, because this is the unit that we have as a means of expression here. So, depending on who you are, the expression will be very similar. You'll see the material body doing things, interacting with people. But is it the karma that's controlling them, or is it spiritual impetus that's controlling them? That is the only question. Here, you get unlimited, eternal benefit for that, and you never lose it, and you're always increasing your spiritual knowledge and practices here. Karma, you can lose it, you can gain it, body after body, lifetime after lifetime. You're not gaining any spiritual knowledge. You're left unhappy. You're left with this feeling of wanting more. As you'll see, it doesn't matter how much money you make. This karmic balance it doesn't satisfy your inner self, So here in the purport it says material compassion, lamentation. This is the first chapter, the first purport of the Bhagavad Gita. Well, second chapter technically. And the first thing that Prabhupada says is material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. So, if you've never read anything before, you have no association with so-called the devotees of, Krishna consciousness, the Gaudiya Vaishnavism. You read this is the first line. Material compassion, lamentation, and tears are all signs of ignorance of the real self. So, you don't even know what the real self is referring to here. It's the first purport. So you're wondering, what does that mean? Who is the real self? Material. Why are we saying this word material? Compassion, lamenting, tears, ignorance. These are all very strong words. So just unpacking this would take a long time. So first, we've discussed the difference between material here and spiritual. Spiritual essentially means that you're placing God in the center. You can use whatever term that you want for God. We refer to God as being Krishna, the all-attractive form of God. We also see God in unlimited forms. Krishna is said to be the most perfect form, the originator of the other forms, of the other religions, of the other gods. Buddha and all these different incarnations as well that people follow are also part and parcel of Krishna and come for specific purposes. Everything is connected. So this word Krishna allows us to connect all religions to different rungs, different levels of understanding, to different people's inclinations at the time, to different people's abilities to accept knowledge. So one religion is not better or worse than another, but they're like going through grades in high school or elementary school. Grade 1, grade 2, you learn a little bit, you move up, you move up. So the different religions are there for people of different levels of understanding. Krishna consciousness, Krishna is said to be the most attractive, the most opulent, and everything is coming down. So if you come to Krishna consciousness, it's seen that you're basically at or able to attain the highest level of spiritual advancement, realization of religion, whatever you want to call it. And everything else is already contained within that. So you're able to easily see and understand everyone else's religions, why they're there. If you're dabbling in lower religious or spiritual or yogic practices, you're just not giving yourself the chance to come to the full understanding, to the full realization of things. Do you have to? No. Are the other religions important? Yes. Everything here has a purpose, and that purpose is what we're going to unpack. That purpose is a little bit, I don't know what the word would be, but Krishna is crafty, and the material world it is crafted in a way that, yes, we get to sort of express our desires and put ourselves in the center of things, but at the same time, he's crafty because everything here too is meant to kind of help you to be reminded of him, to be reminded of God. There are religions, there are pain, there are sufferings. So planet Earth really allows you the opportunity to realize that your position in this body is not necessarily the best one that you could be in, and to try to come to the realization that something is wrong here, and you might search that out in any different number of ways, and he gives you those ways. So he doesn't completely cover you with Maya. He lifts the veil just enough so that you can understand that you're suffering. So why is material compassion lamented in tears in the mode of ignorance? Well, so the real self. So it's described that this body is like, it's just a machine, it's a car. You are not the body. I am not this entity. The entity changes every 7 years on a cellular level. I can experience the threads of who I was from 5 years old to 10 to 15 to 20. It doesn't change. I'll be 80, old body, won't be able to do anything. I'm not going to feel any different as long as I'm able to identify with my true self. The true self is said to be the spirit soul. The spirit soul is said to be 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. And that's very small, and it's said to be seated in the heart. That's why anytime a lot of people love to say, me, mine, I, they always point to the heart, because that is where your true consciousness lies, although the mind tends to hijack that connection, and you deal more in a mental plane. And the mind loves to identify with the senses and touch things and feel things and experience things and eat things. And what does this body want today? What do my senses want? What is the mind thinking? So you become really obsessed in the mind-body connection, and that's very materialistic. We're more interested in becoming connected with the mind heart, Paramatma, which is a form of Krishna that's in the heart as well, and the spirit soul, which is ourselves, are called the jiva. Each jiva is specific and different and has its own identity and own set of qualities. Not every jiva is the same. They're all different, and they're very small spiritual parts and parcels of Krishna. And although he's able to break himself up into all of those parts and parcels, you yourself, although taken from Krishna, you are not removing from his collective, total consciousness and total body and spiritual qualities. So there's this thing, where you're simultaneously one and different. And the entity, although part and parcel of Krishna, is not Krishna, but at the same time you are part of Krishna, but you don't have his full set of opulences and strengths. You only have a small subset of them. But you are connected to God and one with God, but you are not God, and that is the difference between Krishna consciousness and impersonalism. So the true self, you are a part and parcel of Krishna. You have certain qualities, and you have a portion of his qualities, but you are not Krishna himself. You never will be. Krishna also manifests himself in a form of lesser total qualities as well, called the Paramatma. And each body, living entity, anything that's moving, growing, living, right from a bacteria right up to elephants and everything in between, has a Paramatma and a Jiva. Those two are providing the energy to the body, the consciousness, the vibrancy, the light in the face that you see. The more materialistic and degraded that you get, the more gray the face will become, the less vibrant the body will become, the more degraded it will become. And that comes from less and less and less connection to the heart and too much connection to the mind. And also having a very impure mind and a lot of bad karma over here that's forcing you to suffer and have a very poor lifestyle. So when you're very identified over here and up here, you're having, material compassion. Oh, why me? Why is there so much suffering in the world? Why are these animals having to suffer? Why am I suffering? Why will they suffer if I kill my family members? Lamenting, why is this person better than me? Why is my life so bad? Why am I an alcoholic? Why am I addicted to this? Why am I fat? Why is this person not fat? Crying. You see children always crying because they place themselves in the center. They're children. They're meant to enjoy. Unless they're a very special child, they're not going to have a lot of consciousness outside of this material realm of sense enjoyment. They love to just sense enjoy, and that's what their kind of dharma is in that particular time period in their life. And so they're always crying because they don't get to enjoy the way they want to, or their parents tell them no, or they can't eat this, or they can't get that, or they don't get to play with the ball because the other kid took the ball from them. Always placing themselves in the center, always crying because they're identifying with the body and other people and what they've done to them or what they want to do to them. Very, very much sense enjoyment and very much this lamentation and constant crying. also just in general, especially babies, they're crying a lot because they're just suffering horribly. They can't express themselves. They can't turn themselves over. They can't scratch themselves or itch themselves. It is an extremely poor position to be in, and they're suffering greatly and lamenting and crying all of the time. Now, if you see an adult doing this, does that make them any different than a child or the consciousness of a child? No, not really. You're in a man's body or a woman's body or whatever body you want to identify with these days. Doesn't matter. But if you're an adult and you're acting in this manner, then you yourself are still at the level at that time. You've degraded yourself down and placed yourself in the center so much, and you've lamented and had so much, compassion for other people or yourself that you're crying. And, this is a material disease that will afflict you as you become more and more self-identified on a material level, and you start seeing people suffering or your own suffering, and it makes you sad. So, next line, compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. So what is true? So we're talking about, Prabhupada says material compassion. Immediately he follows up saying, what is compassion? Compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. So compassion for yourself first. Save yourself first before you save others, right? This is a material principle even on airplanes. Put your mask on first before you help someone else or help your child. So you need to situate yourself, obviously, a little bit before you can go off and help other people. So true compassion is compassion for the eternal soul, is self-realization. So we are the eternal soul, the jiva, the jivatma in the heart. So true compassion for ourselves would mean that we're putting ourselves in a place where we can possibly come to self-realization. Why is that compassion? Well, because if you don't, then you're stuck in this cycle of lamentation, compassion for other people, compassion for yourself. Oh, I did a bad thing today, but it was rough and work was hard. So, I came home and, I'm a single mom, and yes, I drink a lot and yell at my kids, but I'm compassionate to myself because, I'm putting the roof over their head and I work 2 jobs and it's all okay, like what else can I do? And it's true, like what else can you do? Your karma's over here just pulling all the strings, the mind's pulling the strings of the senses. You literally have to have compassion because at some stage you realize that there really isn't anything else that you can do. You're forced into this behavior and you cannot change that unless you start up a spiritual practice in order to counteract your karmas. You cannot stop being who you are until you take up a spiritual practice. It's impossible. So true compassion to yourself is looking at the situation and saying, okay, I am now going to turn to some form of self-realization because I know I can burn off this karma and get out of this cycle. That is compassion for yourself. So what is compassion for other people? The same thing. Once you figure that out, and once you have some spiritual motives, these spiritual motives can override your karma, and you can then go out or speak with your friends, your family, and that's a whole different conversation about how to do that or even when. But true compassion is knowing at this point, now I'm able to help other people to understand how to eliminate the cycle of samsara, of birth and death, of karma incurrences, positive and negative, and relieve them from this constant compassion, lamentation, and tears, and being ignorant about who you are and who the people are around you and your entire situation. So it says Arjun wanted Krishna to kill the demon of misunderstanding that had overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. So Arjuna here is in this placing himself artificially per se, for the sake of the Bhagavad Gita being spoken. But he's placed himself in a position of compassion, lamentation, tears, a very degraded, ignorant, material position to be in. And he's now asking Krishna to kill this demon of misunderstanding that has overtaken him in the discharge of his duty. Duty as a Kshatriya. He's unable to discharge his duties because he is in this degraded material position. And he needs Krishna to help him to understand what the spiritual motives are here to override the material motives, essentially speaking. And spiritual motives and material motives are very disconnected in one sense, because what you do over here spiritually might make zero sense to you in a material fashion. There is no way of connecting the two. If you're only seeing it from here, you can't understand why a spiritualist would do things over here. If you're over here, the spiritualist understands everything about why they're doing, and even a lot of the times what the results may even be over here, but they're not attached to those results either. But they're able to see things as a spiritualist with the motives from this vantage point and from this vantage point, and it gives you a great ability because materialists are only conditioned over here, but you have like a cheat code in the material world. You're now able to act outside of your karma. So it's like you're in a video game and you're a special character where everyone's forced into going this way, right, left, they can jump, they cannot. But now as a spiritualist, you can make decisions and do things over here in the video game, just like Neo can in the Matrix. This is where the whole concept of Neo came from. You know, you can now do things that the video game and the programming don't allow, technically speaking. You're working on a much higher platform, a transcendental platform. So it's very exciting, and it might look like nothing to most people, but you experience it greatly within the heart, and your entire life is very different, and you have all of these cheat codes here. And Krishna is going to, in the Bhagavad Gita, speaking to Arjuna over here in the material sphere, inject all of these spiritual motives, all of this spiritual knowledge into Arjuna, so that he is now able to override what he would never be able to do as a materialist and fight his family. How is he going to do this, right? So you have to gain the spiritual and transcendental knowledge, the cheat codes over here, in order to function over here when normally you wouldn't be able to. We'll do one more. There's quite a bit in the purport. So we've got that. No one knows where compassion should be applied. That's funny. No one knows where compassion should... So, I mean, that's a very interesting statement. No one knows where compassion should be applied. So, if you're compassionate to other people or other animals, you have to understand this purport is speaking strictly from the perspective of being a materialist, right? So as a materialist, you're seeing everyone as having a physical body or a physical form or a physical flower or plant. So the moment that you're experiencing compassion for any of that or yourself, you're placing yourself again in a degraded materialistic position. So no one knows where compassion should be applied. Now that's an interesting statement, because the compassion that he's now stating is previous. The compassion, let's see here, compassion for the eternal soul is self-realization. So he's saying compassion is knowing your true self. And then it states that no one knows where compassion should be applied. So no one knows where compassion, knowledge of the true self, should be applied, because no one knows who they are or what they are, or what their purpose is of being here. So they don't know when to apply that compassion. They don't know that compassion even exists. Again, that compassion we're discussing is over here. So in general, in the material world, because the compassion we're discussing is over here, no one knows when to apply that compassion. It's very interesting how Prabhupada gives this knowledge. And, you can speak a lifetime just on the Bhagavad Gita, because every sentence here is so chock full of information. It's so dense that I know when, before you come to Krishna consciousness, if you read this book just as I had read the book originally, you don't understand anything. The knowledge is so much higher than anything you've ever come across. I did a university degree. I've read all the textbooks. Many other people have. Many people have their PhDs, masters. I don't care who you are. You read these books, you are not going to understand them, because the books are situated over here. And no amount of material understanding helps you. There's no connection from this side to this side. This side can connect over here easily. But when you're over here, there's a huge barrier between the material and the spiritual. So when you read this book, the knowledge, the wording, the density of even the brain capacity required to get past your material conceptions of things aren't there. You don't have enough sukriti, you don't have enough mode of goodness to even allow yourself to hear the words in Bhagavad Gita at the start. So it's very interesting to go through and see like how potent literally every sentence is of this book. Compassion compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. So here we're referring to compassion again as knowledge of the self, but here we've switched back to the original materialistic form of compassion, and being compassionate for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. So we're giving this knowledge, or this idea, that man is used usually as a colloquial term for a woman or man or any human on earth. And we're considered here in the material sphere, we're all drowning. We're literally all in the sea, treading water, enjoying, suffering, birthing, dying, and we're drowning. And eventually, with every birth that we have, we tread water for 60 years, 80 years, 100 years. We tread, we fight, we cry, we laugh, we have compassion, we have anger, we have all these things. And eventually we get tired, the body gets tired, and we can't tread water any longer, and we drown, and we die. The body dies. That is our position. So the dress is also referred to as this human body, dressing the Paramatma and the Jivatma, who we are, the Jiva. So having compassion for this drowning, senseless, materialistic body, it makes no sense whatsoever. Why are we focused on being compassionate to this flesh and blood, to something that we aren't? Why are we compassionate to the animals, to the birds, to the bees, the same animals that are forced into those bodies in some circumstances because they were horrible living entities, because they were people that created heinous activities? A lot of people, as well as we'll describe later, come into the material world starting in those bodies too, and have to work the way up, and may not have been, evil, sinister people that degraded themselves down to that. But either way, working on that sphere of why are they suffering? They're suffering because their material karma forces them to. And if you're over here having compassion for their bodies, feeding them, being happy to, keep them as pets, if you want to save the world and save people and climate change and UNICEF and all these things, that's great. But you're dealing with a material body. Now, you can be over here too with those spiritual motives, and you can, if you have those proclivities, if you have those tendencies, if you like to do those things, great. Connect them to Krishna consciousness. You can still do them, but you're going to be benefiting those entities and people in a very different way. And you're going to get the benefit too. But your consciousness will not be that of seeing these entities as drowning, senseless, material bodies. You will be helping them in a way that you yourself are working from a spiritual perspective, A man fallen in the ocean of nations cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. A man fallen in the ocean of nations. So now, it's like, it's kind of beyond belief at this point. We've only read 5 sentences, and every sentence is a massive statement. They're like archetypal topics. If you've ever studied English, they give you an archetypal topic, very large, broad topic, and then you can write an essay on that archetypal topic and choose something from it. So, this massive archetypes here and how they connect from this to compassion to what the soul is in self-realization, killing that misunderstanding, discharge of your duty. No one knows who the body is, where the compassion should be applied. Compassion for the dress of a drowning man is senseless. We've only read maybe 100 words. And then already we're connecting all that again to a man fallen in the ocean. So now we've got the ocean of nations connecting the idea of a person drowning. But what are they drowning in? Not just water, an entire ocean of nations. Nations means ignorance. It means you have no idea what is going on, what's happening, what things are affecting you. So a man, again, any living entity, is fallen into this entire ocean of ignorance and nations and cannot be saved simply by rescuing his outward dress, this material body. And it says the gross material body. It couldn't be any more succinct. And to think that Srila Prabhupada so-called wrote these while traveling, preaching, wrote mostly at night in the evening at an advanced age, I don't think a lot of people necessarily have the appreciation for what has happened with Srila Prabhupada and with these books. Also, another topic, I'm reading the original Bhagavad Gita here, which I strongly suggest all of you do. There are no issues with this book whatsoever. This is the most succinct essay in 6 sentences that you could possibly ever achieve, in my opinion. And for someone to come along and think that changing these books or changing these words when they are so absolutely spellbinding in a way is beyond belief. Like, if you think that you're capable of doing something better, then do it yourself. Write your own Bhagavad Gita. Do your own translations. If you think that there's something askew or off, do not change someone else's work. Do your own work and try to be, famous or successful through that route. But, the only explanation for going through and changing this type of stuff is, again, you're over here and you're trying to place yourself in the center somehow. and you're gaining a little bit of feelings of, I am better, I'm able to, work on this book and change the words of Srila Prabhupada. I think that it should be like this. I think there were errors. That is a material consciousness. Srila Prabhupada said that he didn't write the books, that Krishna spoke through him. There's many other circumstances of books that were written in similar circumstances as well in our line. We have a book here which is written through Sanjaya, who is visually seeing this conversation happening through a mystic siddhi. So it is not outside the realm of thinking that Srila Prabhupada was somehow, what's the word? I can't think of it right now. Channeling this knowledge from a spiritual place, from Krishna, and have the audacity to think that even incorrectly spoken, that you think something's incorrect. If it was given direct from Krishna to Srila Prabhupada, and even if those mistakes were made in translating from his younger, newer devotees who weren't necessarily adept at working with Sanskrit and things like that, who are you to think that any of those so-called errors were made in error? If you're really on a transcendental platform, then everything that happened happened the way that Krishna wanted it to happen. And then you can say, well, me changing the books is also what Krishna wants. And yeah, you can argue that too, and only you know in your heart what the answer truly is to that. But, when you read the original books, in my opinion, they are perfect. I've read all of Prabhupada's books many times. All the original books that I have, I've never found anything ever that needed to be changed. So I just wanted to bring that up too, because I'm just reading the Bhagavad Gita. It's so beautiful. I mean, we don't need to change anything in here. So the last thing here, a man fallen in the ocean of nations cannot be saved by simply rescuing his outward dress, the gross material body. Yeah, you are in an ocean of nations, and you will not be saved whatsoever if you're working over here in the material sphere. You won't be saved. No one's going to save you. Nothing's going to happen to make you feel better. No amount of money is going to make you feel better. No amount of sex, no amount of food, overeating, no amount of adoration, no amount of compassion and philanthropy, nothing. Not a single thing will ever save you from that ocean of nations, from drowning, from dying, from birth, death, old age, and disease. The gross material body and the karma associated with it will take you on whatever path you're destined for. You might enjoy, you might suffer, but on the grand scheme of things, lifetime after lifetime, you will suffer as much as you enjoy. And there's always a balance to things, and you have no control over it. So if you want to stay in a position where you have no control, then don't come to Krishna consciousness. If you want to take control of your life and be able to work the way that, essentially you want to work, but your work becomes spiritual and connected to Krishna, so it becomes more positive. Not always, but as you become a better devotee, then your work becomes more pure as well. But if you want to at least have half a chance at changing your life for the better, then I strongly suggest you come to Krishna consciousness. We're only halfway through the purport here, but we're already in at an hour, and we'll just continue on with the purport. And yeah, my Danga videos will continue, and that's that. Okay, Hare Krishna.